Hello everyone and welcome to Tranquility Through Life's Natural Beauty. Thank you so much for coming to my channel, and don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and why not share this channel if you like what you see. As I always say, do check out my playlist, especially on this channel. There is so many different things for you, something for everybody. So do go and check out my playlist and see what I have content on this channel. So let's start with this. So we have Friday film, a little film clip, something for Friday about our renovation. So we're looking at part 5 of one of my outbuilding, total rebuild, renovation and repurpose projects. We have story time. So we're going to continue today with Life in the Old Days, a story I'm reading by the author. And we have a Q&A today, so do stay tuned to the end to see the Q&A. So much more besides. Let's get going straight away. What should we start with? Let's start with Quote Corner. This is the current quote for Friday. So I hope you enjoy my quotes, and don't forget, if you like my quotes and sayings, there are many daily quotes in full videos on this channel. So responding to some comments and emails that you've asked me to continue reading this story of life as it was in past times in Wallington, which is Surrey in England. So I'll continue where I left off. If you want to see more, go back to previous Friday lives. And this is about parents and sisters. And the author says, when I come to put down what I remember about my parents, I come up against the most difficult barriers of all, since my childhood judgment and loyalties, unwittingly, are clouded and prejudiced by the never-ending quarrels that flared as the result of the love-hate relationship between them, inadvertently involving my sisters and me. Basically, they were incompatible. And mother, having been brought up in an indulgent and extravagant atmosphere, continually expected my father to provide her with more housekeeping money than he could reasonably afford. In those days, women were always kept in the dark as to their husband's earnings, so they never really knew whether they were getting a fair share. How much better it is now that things are more open in most marriages, where the family income and budget are freely discussed by both parents. Many years later, when I had been married and lived in my own home for some long time, I was able to stand back, as it were, and see more clearly both sides of their sad problem, and thus to reassess and revise the emotional and immature judgments of my childhood. One aspect in particular has since struck me as very odd. Despite the almost daily occurrence of bitter quarrels and hysterical scenes in our household, I can find no trace whatsoever of these miseries in any of my personal diaries, which I began to keep at which I began to keep at about the age of 10 and have continued throughout my life. I can only assume that they were so much part and parcel of our daily life that it was not worth mentioning them, since they came into the same category as getting up, having meals, going to bed, and so on. Although I see that I did include daily mentions of such things as the weather. Now, you may or may not know this is a very English trait. People who have little to talk about their lives will always talk about the weather. It is something I don't talk about deliberately for that reason. Also, I wrote what I did in my leisure time, the friends I met, family illnesses, and so on. Modern psychiatrists might have something to say on this subject, with their emphasis on the effect of unhappy homes and marriages. The one thing I do recall is being somewhat afraid to get married myself in case it all turned out for the worse. In those days, divorce was almost unheard of, and as most women did not have any training for a career, they could not risk giving up their homes, and it was financially impossible to support themselves and their children except in the poorest circumstances. Things now seem to have gone to the other extreme, when, at the drop of a hat, marriages are broken up and no one need put up with years of unhappiness. Either way, it is the children who are the main victims. Returning to my mother, Maud Mary Ann, as she was christened, was temperamental, vivacious, and thoroughly spoilt by the family from the start. She, being the eldest and possessing a strong personality, at the age of 6, she was sent off to the little dance school run by Miss Bonwick in Bridge Road. I know Bridge Road. And excelled herself by spending the shilling given to her for the week's fee on buying a flaxen-haired doll she had long admired in the toy shop in Manor Road. Returning home proudly with this, she was amazed when grandmother, her mother, took it away and chastised her. Old Grandfather Fosdick came upon her screaming on the stone kitchen floor and eventually insisted that she had to be given back the doll. No wonder she grew up so spoiled. This episode was used to tease mother at that shop for many years. Her next school was, I believe, known as the Wallington High School for the Daughters of Gentlefolk, and was situated at the junction of Manor Road and Queen's Road. This later became Wallington County School for Girls, where we children followed in her footsteps and had the same teacher in Form 1, dear Miss Newton, a war widow who had been obliged to return to her teaching career to keep herself and her 2 children. The discipline in Mother's Day was quite fantastically strict, with no speaking whatsoever allowed in the class, and the severe headmistress liable to burst into the room at any moment and administer punishment to any wrongdoers. On Saturday mornings, Mother used to ride in the pony and trap with her father along the rough lane, which is now Stafford Road. And to let you know, that is a very main road with all the high street shops. And they used to collect the weekly provisions from the large grocers in North End, Croydon. I think the name Williamson's. In winter, her hands became frozen. She would tell us, despite being wrapped up in rugs, and grandfather would give her a sip of the mid-morning port, which he always indulged in at the public house before the return trip. When she was in her teens, Mother would often drive her friends out in the little pony and trap on summer evenings, trotting round the quiet Surrey lanes, or occasionally pulling up to gather primroses and bluebells. And here's a picture of, this is en route to Ascot Races, 1908, Maud Forsyth, the author's mother, seated at the front of the horse brake in a frilly hat, and her father next but one to the driver. On the far left, Mr. Millest, the grocer, whose shop was in Station Approach, Wallington. So there's a picture of that. Sorry, I've got my disco lights on today if it looks like it keeps changing colour. That's not an error of the live. Oh dear. Her special lifelong friend was Rose Stafford, later to become the well-known and loved Mrs. Sid Miller of Mitcham Junction, where the Millers grew their famous watercress and built up a flourishing market garden business for many years. As soon as school days were over, my mother and her friends made the most of the limited range of entertainments available and took part in quite a pleasant round of social events such as music evenings in each other's homes, charity concerts, private dances, and trips on the River Thames or to the races. My mother had a beautiful soprano voice and took regular singing lessons, and this made her much in demand to sing at charity concerts. At one of these, she was accompanied on the piano by the famous composer Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who lived in the district and is buried in Bandon Hill Cemetery. I think she was all her life a frustrated woman who should have taken up a professional singing career and not become tied within the limitations of marriage and motherhood. And this is one of the trips, the author's parents, grandparents and friends on a boat trip down the river in 1908. There. The river trips mentioned were organised by John Forsyth, who provided the horses and carriages, and after Mother's death, when I had to sort out her personal papers, I found a menu dated 1908, which she had kept from one of these outings. And it's basically saying that on arrival, they will be given sandwiches and meat pâtés, biscuits and cheese. Luncheon would be salmon mayonnaise, roast chicken, York ham, veal, ham pie, pigeon pie, salads, strawberry cream or pineapple cream, and fruit tarts. Ices are to be served during the afternoon. Tea at 5:30, will be prawn sandwiches, white and brown bread and butter, cherry and Madeira cakes, fancy cakes, preserves, strawberries, watercress, etc., tea and coffee. Wine, spirits and cigars should also be attainable as desired. And then we'll do one more bit today. I may add as a footnote that my parents and most of my relatives have lived into their 80s or 90s with hardly an operation or serious illness between them. So the menus of their day do not seem to have shortened their lives. Visits to the dressmakers and milliners took quite a large portion of those days, since they involved several fittings and much purchasing of materials and choosing of patterns for each creation. Of course, as the family grew larger, Mother was expected to help with the care of the younger children, but all in all, she seemed to have quite a good life, and indeed she constantly told us in later years that those days were the happiest she could remember. So I think we'll leave that there for today. Let me know if you're enjoying this series, and thank you for listening. Okay, let's do a little look at just one of the playlists that you can watch on this channel, and also further points of this can be seen on my other channel, which is New Beginnings, My Everyday Life in Rural Cyprus. So do go and take a look there as well. I made it back in time. If you do lives, do you do other things while things are playing or something? Sometimes I use my little interludes as emergencies, or someone comes in and needs to talk to me, a volunteer or something like that. So I'll see them hovering and I'll just play something. So yeah, there's normally a reason why I pop an interlude on, or I might be running out of water, which I actually am today. Quite dry today. We're still having sandstorms. If you're listening on my other channel, I mentioned them quite a while back. We had one, now we've got another one. I don't know if you can hear, it does get on my throat a little bit. But there we go. So they've advised people to stay indoors at the moment. This is quite a heavy one. Okay, let's go on to this. Okay, so as you know, my Friday quizzes are very varied on subjects, and today's subject is flags. Now, a lot of people did comment to me saying about how the last live, I can't remember what the subject was, but they said, oh, I thought I wouldn't know anything about that. And people did. So surprise yourself. Someone did also mention they were a quizzer and they got more right on this than their topic, their specialised subject that I had already done a quiz on. So you never know. This is also good to test what you do know that you might think you don't know. So I'm going to read all the questions first, and then after that, I will give you all the answers straight away. So stay tuned. So today's quiz is about flags. Flags. The first question is, what do referees use flags to indicate in an American football game? Now, hopefully, if you're American, you probably know this answer. Not so much if you don't know American football. So what do referees use flags to indicate in an American football game? While you're thinking of that, I'm going to continue. The next question is, in semaphore, how is the letter R signalled? In semaphore, how is the letter R signalled? And funny enough, I was talking about this the other day, saying I learned all this at Brownies. I doubt very much if I remember much, rather than the very first ones where you started something like A, B, C, D, something like that, and then like a clock going round. And that may look backwards to you, so don't worry about that. I did start the correct way. So the letter R. The next question is, on a pirate flag, what does the hourglass symbolise? Did you know there was an hourglass on a pirate flag? So on a pirate flag, what does an hourglass symbolise? Have you ever seen that? The next question is, what colour flags are used in semaphore? And the reason for that is, obviously, you need to know the difference between the right hand and the left hand. So what are the colour flags used in semaphore? Obviously, you've got two colours because you have two arms. So there's a clue for you. I want two colours. So you can guess that. And do let me know in the comments below how many of these you know and what you learned new today. Two more questions. The next one. In which country were pirate flags first used? Oh, that's interesting. Think about it. In which, oh, sorry, not in which country, in which century, beg your pardon. In which century were pirate flags first used? Because they were used at sea, so it wasn't in a country, was it? In which century were pirate flags first used? And the last question, what displayed a US flag on Mars? What displayed a US flag on Mars? So have a think about that. And then we do the answers. So the first question was, what do referees use flags to indicate in an American football game? So as I say, if you're American, I hope you got this one right. And the answer is an error. Did you get that? The second question was, in semaphore, how is the letter R signalled? And the answer is by holding both arms and flags straight out. So it's like a T shape with the arms. I wonder if you got that one or not. The next question, on a pirate flag, what does an hourglass symbolise? I didn't know this. And would you know? The answer is that time is running out. That's interesting. The next one was, what colour flags are used in semaphore? What colour flags are used in semaphore? And the answer is red and yellow. Of course, it's got to be two colours that stand out very easily and colours that were easily made in the past. The next question was, in which century were pirate flags first used? And the answer to that is the 18th century. I think I might have guessed earlier. I'm not sure. What did you say? And the last question is, what displayed a US flag on Mars? And of course, that was the Viking lander. How many did you get? That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out of 6, how many did you get? Let me know. Okay, let's go on to this. Okay, question of today is this. If you're watching this back later, please do put your answer in the comments below. I love reading your answers to my questions of the day. The question today is, if you suddenly won millions, what would you do first? If you suddenly won millions, what would you do first? I think that's easy for me. I would give loads of it away to those that were in true need. It always gets my goat when people ask for funding when they want something new rather than secondhand. Go and find something secondhand. They want something new, or they want their wedding paid for, or these kind of things like that. Or I want a new car. Well, I'm sure a lot of people want a new car. I need a new car. Remember, in the past, most people didn't even have cars and got on with life. So there we go. So I would give loads away to those truly in need. But if it was myself, well, I'd fix all our problems. And do stay tuned on my other channel, and you will see part of it on this channel coming up in a Dawn's Diary. And there's a playlist on this channel of Dawn's Diary, and there are lots of little snippets in one video. If you like kind of shorts, it's a week form of things that have happened here. So it could be all sorts. It could be a quick recipe, not the full recipe, but it leads you on to what I've been cooking. Or it might be something that's occurred here, which is coming up. It might be we had a mad dash to the vets. So that was in the one I've just edited. So lots of little snippets. It says Monday and a little bit, Tuesday a little bit, and it does a whole week. So if you like short, sharp little bits, but all in one video, then check out my Dawn's Diary and you will see issues we have, big issues. And when we live off grid and an extremely frugal life, you will see how I have issues. Which leads me into answering the question, I will fix all our problems if it had to be the money for me. Fix my problems, fix my house, if it's got to be for me. Obviously, I'd see what else Mike wanted, but if it's got to be for me, as I say, I think it would take fixing everything here and setting up things to make a big community. I live in an abandoned village, so I'm not talking about locally. Something I've always said I'd quite like to do, if money was no object, I would either like to renovate, but sympathetically, all the abandoned stone houses in my area, keep them as they were, but obviously I do like them as they are, though ruins. And I've also talked often about how, although we have a lot of land, it's not a place people would come because it's so remote and up a mountain. I would maybe do something like have a big bit of land near a town and have like garage sales, car boot sales, like stalls, people selling crafts, and just let them come and sell their wares. And maybe on that site, I'd have a big like warehouse, and we could run community events like craft, learning how to weave chairs, like seats and chairs, a lot of forgotten crafts or crafts to teach people that don't know crafts. And then I would have a small area of it as a shop of resale stuff, and Mike would use outside to sell salvage stuff. And while he's there, he can make things out of salvaged items. If you want to see the sort of things we salvage and what we make out of them, then again, do check out my main channel, which is New Beginnings, my everyday life in rural Cyprus. And that leads me very nicely on to today's Friday film footage. So this is part 5 of one of my total rebuilds and repurpose of a derelict outbuilding on our land. So I hope you enjoyed part 5. Thank you to those letting me know that they're really enjoying the series, and do read the description under this video. There is a slight change. For example, Airbnb, you actually now email me directly because we have updated what is available. So obviously, and the Workaway, do visit the Workaway site if you want to volunteer, which is also linked below. Any questions or you're not sure, then do drop me a comment, tell me what you're interested, and I will send you the link where you need to find out more. So I think we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for being here. As always, I really appreciate it, and I hope you will check out my other channel too, and see you next time.